franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. On today's show, we are talking with a gentleman who is known as DJ Faith. DJ Faith is a DJ who services the Montreal community and has a number of other areas of his life that he's going to share with us. Welcome to studio, DJ Faith.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, let's start off with the first question. Where were you born, and different elements of your upbringing that eventually led you to being a DJ?
Well, I was born in Montreal and raised in Montreal. And after studying for almost 13 years of theology and religious studies, I had this passion for music as much as being a DJ, as being a songwriter. And pushing that passion led me in some different scenes in Montreal, where I became DJ and public relation, and started being involved with lots of events.
What kind of events have you DJ'd?
Well, mainly in the beginning were like bars, because back in the 80s and late 80s there was not as much segregation. It was like more like you would go to certain bars and they would play different styles of music without actually being labeled. So I started like doing events in different bars. And until it led me in the, like around 91, where it became Gothic Industrial, like a label, like a fashion, where I started to get involved in that. Until Fetish came more popular in Montreal, and then I started doing DJs for events like that as well.
Now, when you were DJing, what exactly, and walk me through this, what is the day-to-day lifestyle of someone who's a DJ?
Well, there's a lot of research, and we have to take in mind that back then there was no internet, and there was no, Napsters and Casa and all that stuff, so you really had to go in the little shops on Montreal and, little used record shop and, start hunting vinyls and finding all this stuff that's from Europe, Germany, Belgium, and, try to get, like, the best playlist possible. So I guess that's... The lifestyle was a lot of record hunting and a lot of PR, going out, even nights where you're not actually working, to keep in touch with scenes and people, and that's a pretty much nocturnal life, I would say.
And how has that changed now that the internet has taken hold?
Well, it's more it's another ball game, because now you have, let's say you're working on you have an event, and 2 weeks before that event you want to refresh your playlist, or you can spend 2 days on the net and you can download stuff and make fresh compilations, and then you could show up and work, and every time you work you can bring new stuff and new remixes, and it's more accessible and it's easier. And the vinyls, well, for that style of music, are not as popular as for, let's say, trance or R&B or house. So you work a lot with CDs, so it's a lot easier on that side. But you still have to be very creative.
Now, how long have you been a DJ?
I started in 85, 86.
So you've been at this now for at least 15 some odd years.
Yeah, at least.
And in that time of playing other people's music, did you ever start to compose or create your own music?
As a matter of fact, I did in 1989. I founded my first project that was called, or that is still called, WESTERNDREAM, which was kind of a dark, psychedelic, Gothic-oriented project, and started doing shows all over, across Montreal for different events as well. And if you want to know some events, it was like there was a place called the Studio on Saint Laurent that was part of the Just for Laugh Museum. Did some shows there. Played at Fufun Electric a lot of times. Lion d'Or. All kinds of places like that, and very theatrical shows with a band playing, dancers, and conceptual TVs with visuals and live animals, all kind, like presented like a apocalyptic circus, something like that,
An apocalyptic circus.
Yeah, and it's like a circus that is moving from city to city, at the end of times, that's the concept I used to do with WESTERNDREAM.
Well, this is really interesting. Can you elaborate on apocalyptic?
Well, apocalyptic in the sense that we're living at a time where a lot of religions and spiritual beliefs think that it's the end of a cycle or aeon or like the age of Aquarius, a new beginning, golden age, all these stuff. So to have a band that would like take elements from different religious background and put it in some kind of dark music with like musicians that wear actual costumes and have a symbolic on stage. That's what I was trying to do with when I say a circus for the end of times. We had a dancer, we had live snakes and reptiles and stuff like that, And the music is very very hard and heavy and mood oriented,
Where did you get the live animals, the snakes and the reptiles?
Well, that's another passion, and that goes back even further. Since I'm 5, I've always been fascinated by reptiles and started collecting reptiles when I was really young. And until I had a collection that was built like by the age of, 16, 17, I had like around 40 different animals. So people used to ask me, hey, can you bring a snake for this event? Can you bring this? Can you bring that? And I started doing that until it led me to be like an animal prop specialist for movies as well. So I'm pretty known in Montreal as the guy you call when you need some weird critter or some weird reptile and stuff like that.
How many animals do you have right now?
Right now I've got around 20 of them, mainly lizards.
And you don't ever get worried that a snake or a lizard is going to escape from its cage?
It's already happened, but it's more or less under control. It takes a lot of energy and care, but once everything is under control, it rarely happens. But it's already happened that I've lost some animals, or that they escaped, or that they bit me, or stuff like that. But overall, it's pretty under control.
What's the most dangerous animal you've got right now?
Right now, it's a monitor lizard, actually. Lizard that gets around 6 feet adult size, which is carnivorous and is a bit of a scavenger. So and he's still young, but still very aggressive. So that's the most dangerous animal that I have right now. But I've handled some snapping turtles that were really aggressive, and some snakes as well, but non-venomous. But some snakes, even though non-venomous, could be pretty dangerous.
Like which ones?
Like a blood python or a carpet python, or actually some big bird-eating tarantulas as well, or scorpions, stuff like that. Which I'm not too keen of, but I have worked with insects as well.
And is that something that you don't get to decide which animals you get to work with?
I have a say for that. Like if somebody would ask me something that's like a monkey, or something that's really risky on a health level, because a monkey, if it bites you, you can get really sick, for instance. So at that point, I'm going to say no, I don't do that. Or a venomous snake is illegal, so I'm going to tell whoever calls me, well, I'm sorry, I don't do that. So there is a limit, but I will always decide where I stop and where I go. I go on.
Let me get this straight. You would rather work with a bird-eating tarantula than work with a monkey?
Definitely.
Because the monkey is more dangerous.
The monkey is very dangerous, especially when they come from the old continent. All monkeys that are from Africa and India have a virus that if they bite the human is going to get really, really sick and eventually die. And vice versa. If a human bites a monkey that's from the old continent, the monkey will die. That's what you call the bee virus. So it's a kind of a booby trap to avoid monkeys and humans from mingling. It's quite interesting.
Let's get back to your education in theology.
Sure.
Why theology?
Why theology? Because since I was very young, I was always fascinated by ancient history and always convinced that there must have been something behind, the Bible and all these, these things that are so present in our civilization. So I was very interested in learning the actual language in which the Bible was written. So I started studying Hebrew, and then I did a bit of Latin, and I had a chance to study the Old Testament in its original language and see, all different books and commentaries and try to see the evolution of religion, from paganism to Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and all these actual, monotheistic religions.
If you had to define what your current religious beliefs are, what would they be?
I think I believe in a universal religion that's unfortunately hidden, and in which I believe there's one creator that's not nameable, that's very subtle, very ethereal, and that all the world's religion tends to bring, the worshipping back to that same God, but actually without mentioning any religion in, particular. I think I believe in the truth behind, at the source of everything, So it's a personal religion that in which I believe with all the elements I've studied in different, school of thoughts,
What religion were you brought up with as a child, and when did you make the transition from that religion to your interest in theology?
I was brought up with. I wasn't brought up actually in any religious beliefs. My parents were not really practicing any religious. They were not really into religion. It's something that really came from inside. So right now, that's where I am.
When you see people who are practicing whatevers, regardless of the religion, but they practice it day in and day out, and they're very devoted and very loyal to their particular religion. What goes through your mind, given that you've studied theology?
Well, I see that nothing is new under the sun, like King Solomon said. That there's the potentiality of religion, and through history, everything's being recycled. For example, we see that in the past 10 years that there's a big revival for piercing and tattoos, for instance. And people are like, oh, this is a modern phenomenon. Well, in fact, it's not, because in the ancient times, it used to be part of religious cults. And they used to be very, very strong and very done across, the Middle Eastern and, ancient civilizations. So when I see that, I'm just noticing that it's just renewed, It's just like people today are doing stuff and they don't really know the hidden meaning, but these forces are still being worshipped in an indirect way,
Now let's make the connection between your studies in theology and your apocalyptic circus.
Okay.
And did your studies in theology inspire your circus idea?
Definitely. Yeah, I was very, my favorite topic was the actual understanding of the harmony between good and evil in everything, the combination of inverse polarity, and to understand that if there was a God, then it wouldn't be just a God of good, that it must have been a unity between good and evil. So it led me to studying something that's called Kabbalah, which I'm really fascinated by, which is the mystical aspect of Judaism. And in these studies, I started understanding that there's no light and there's no darkness. It's only part of one thing. And it kind of gave me the idea for all that apocalyptic concept, where trying to find light in darkness and trying to find darkness in light, and understand that everything is linked. So yes, it did inspire me for music. So a lot of my text and my concepts were based on different things I've studied, or that I wanted to put in a musical form.
Working as a DJ.
Yes.
You're working for a number of different communities out there, a number of different styles of music. Having this background in theology, do you ever find yourself forming an opinion or judgments on the people that attend the events that you're DJing?
I wouldn't say so. I just I'm always pleased in a positive way to see, like I mentioned the tattoos as an example. I'm doing a lot of I'm implicated in the BDSM scene for a couple of years, and as people must think most of the time, there's a conflict between having original sexual practices and the actual Judeo-Christian teaching. And having studied what I have studied, I think that there's not that much conflict between both, because it's something that's old as humanity. So whenever I'm doing these events, I always see a spiritual side, the passion when, for instance, in BDSM that people put towards, the way of dressing and the way they're into it, it's almost a religious, it's almost a worshipping state, So I try to see these parallels, but never judgmental or never, never preaching. It's not, I think preaching is a man-made thing, and that the religion at the base are not focused around that,
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and we'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the Adult Male Virgin Seminars and Telephone Consultations. If you are an adult and want to get a handle on this once and for all, you need this seminar. Being an adult male virgin can be most stigmatizing in today's society. You feel like a failure in the eyes of the mass culture around you, alienated from your male friends who all talk about their sexual conquests, and you must hide this shameful secret lest they use it against you. And the very personal pain, anguish, and despair that cannot be described by words that haunts you every moment of your life. Enough is enough. It is time for male virgins to take charge of their sex lives. Frank gives you the rules of winning in this seminar, the Adult Male Virgin Seminars and Telephone Consultations. Make your first time the best time of her life. Only available at franktalks.com. Frank helps adult boys turn into men.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer. Your inner game is as unique and personal as your signature or your fingerprints. This book provides you with the means to create your own seduction persona. By this, learn what it means to be a man and attract the women you want. Learn about how men and women think differently and how to take the lead in a relationship. This book is for you at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. We're in studio today with DJ Faith, and this interesting gentleman is going to share a little bit of his life with us. Welcome back to studio, DJ Faith.
Thank you, Frank.
I find it so interesting, and we had just touched upon it near the end of the last interview segment. You have a background in theology, you have an interest in the study of religions, and here you are, a DJ, playing music in events of alternative communities.
Yes.
And rather than be judgmental or negative on it, you actually see a positive in this.
Of course I do.
And I'd like you to talk to me about other people, or what would you say? That's the question. What would you say if someone who is very religious is looking in on these communities and has something negative to say, given that you are a theologist? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say that the biggest mistake that people, believe today is that there's separate entities of good and evil. Because what I believe is that the actual problem, if you want to talk about the fall of man and, the original sin, is that good and evil got intertwined as one, and they're not, you cannot distinguish one from the other, and that's what the era in which we're living in. So when somebody would tell me, hey, what are you doing, doing events and, some decadent things as, let's say, BDSM, I tell them, well, you're wrong, because, there's sparkles of light in every aspect of creation, as much as in what you may call the dark side, as much as in the light side. So for me, being there doesn't mean that I'm actually, falling. It means that, I'm there and I could even see some positive, almost spiritual aspects in some of these events and some of these, communities. So for me, being there is something that's very positive. I wouldn't think that I could get preached at or, So yeah, basically.
Can you point out to me or give me an example of something you find spiritual?
Okay. Let's say the art of bondage.
Okay.
Okay, in the way that, let's say from Japanese tradition, the way the art of actually tying up and working with ropes. It's almost similar to the mandalas and to some of the ancient rituals that you would see in some of the old religions, because there's so much passion into it, and there's so much like art put into it in the way it's made, that I could almost see a parallel with some of the rituals. I see it very ritualistic. That's the way I see it. And I think that it's each, with their own, soul. Like, if someone's putting passion and doesn't see evil in what they're doing, it cannot be evil. I think that guilt is the real form of evil, and that it's all a question of perspective. And that there's an ongoing relationship with the Creator that's one-on-one with every human being, and that there's no other human being that should come and say, hey, this is wrong or this is not, And we learned that in the first phrase of, in the beginning of the Old Testament, because we say, God created man to his own image. It doesn't mean that, man was made physically like God. It means that man is like God in the sense that he's got a relationship that's unique with him, And inside each man, there's the miracle of the whole creation of the universe. And in that sense, I think that, it's all a question of perspective.
Have you ever been on the receiving end of someone saying to you, you should not be doing what you're doing, or you should not be associating with certain people because they're bad?
Yeah, it has happened. It has happened, and I've answered that, a lot of these people that are actually saying that have a secret life and are doing stuff that are on the perverted end, let's say, and they just hide it. And, in comparison to that, some people in these communities are so cool with it and so open, and there's no conflict. So I think that these people are more sane. So that's what I've been answering.
Let's talk about your record label.
Sure.
Give me the name, when you set it up, why you set it up.
Okay, it's called GOLEMRECORDS.
How do you spell that?
Golem. A golem is a creature in the folklore, Judeo-Christian again, and even like in early like Chaldean and Sumerian, you can find references to that. It's a man that's created by another man with the same process as the process that God used to create man out of clay. So using meditation and secret names and permutation of names of God, some wise man or sage or sorcerer would be able to create life. So a golem is a man-made creature that's almost perfect, but it's not, because man cannot create a perfect human. And that gave the background to the story of Frankenstein, for instance. So GOLEMRECORDS is the concept of doing a record label that's using technology but remains man-made, remains, still, a hybrid with new technology and traditional musical approach, and it makes it, finding a way to combine both ends,
Now, you could have just done this as an artist. Why start a record label?
Because I've always been producing, and competition is so big, and that if you were waiting for the majors to do something with your art, then you can spend your life, in your living room, And so I just decided to, after doing a couple of recordings and seeing the reaction, I decided to become, self-reliable and just actually pushing my stuff. And with the internet, it was better and it was easier. So that's why I started that project. That record label.
And under the record label, do you distribute anything? Do you mass produce?
We started some, but it's in the process of being right now. So it's not really distributed worldwide for now, except for the net. And but we are looking at some possibilities to export more, and But as I said, the internet already does a lot of work on that side, because people could visit the website from wherever they are and actually, be turned on to the material and send feedback and, all that stuff.
Let's talk about your website.
Sure.
What's your website name, and from the time I arrive there, what can I expect to find?
Okay, so it's www.golemrecords.com. and it's basically the site for the record label. So it's a portal where you have news on different artists that are actually working on Golem Records, and you can browse and listen to musical excerpts, and you could see the different implication with communities, and different artists are doing what and doing events for this or for that, and you keep always an update, and you can browse through like history and lyrics and discography and all that stuff. So that's what the website is about, basically.
Now, let's go back to your education in theology.
Yes.
I'm wondering, given that you have a passion for music, you went so far as to start your own record label, working on different music projects, why not have an education that is music-related rather than an education in theology?
Well, I guess it has to do with the path of every soul, but it's an interesting question, because what I did realize in music is that passion is one thing and technicality is another. I've met so many great musicians that had studied their whole life and were telling me, I can play, but it's hard to create original stuff. And did you study? And I'm like, yeah, I did my share of studying in music, but not as much as you. But I find that it brings barriers when you know too much and you sink into the technicality of stuff, because it's never good enough. If you look in the history of music, you have, like, for instance, a band like the Sex Pistols, which were not really classically trained, which they did a big impact, And then you have other jazz musicians that are amazing and that you never hear about them, So that's always the example I like to give, It's good to have that kind of spontaneous, kind of spur of the moment attitude with music, like with different kinds of arts as well,
So what training in music did you actually have?
Well, I I studied a basic classical formation without going in depth, and I learned bass with a bluesman for a couple of years, and then I was working in a bit of the hip-hop scene, but in the early 80s, not the hip-hop as we know it today. So back then was like the using of drum machines and the beginning of looping and all that stuff. So I got turned on to that aspect of technology back then, and kept on practicing and working, and had some vocal lessons for a couple of years as well with a very known singer in Montreal, and just polished my art through the years, basically.
And you were doing this while you were DJing and studying theology?
Yeah, exactly.
And did anybody, throughout the time that you were doing this, did anybody else ever question you, like, why don't you just study music?
Yeah, I guess so, but a couple of people had mentioned that to me, but being a bit of a rebel in my own way, I think that if I would have studied music, as intensive as some people do, maybe I would not have been so much turned on to, because it's a reward for me, it's something that's very very free, very no boundaries, when I do music. So perhaps if I would have been, immersed in the whole academic side of it, then maybe it would not have been the same result,
So if I understand this correctly, you made a conscious decision not to educate yourself full-time in music so that you could enjoy it more.
Yeah, it's not like I decided that before starting. It's just like, I was studying theology and I had this passion for music, and, like a yin and yang thing, I started, continuing both aspects, and at one point when the music was sounding good and had something, I just said, okay, I'm going to get into it. But I would lie if I would say I didn't spend hours and nights, working and studying on different, the aspects of technology and, studio recording and engineering and stuff like that. So I did learn, but not in a non-academic environment, definitely.
Let's talk about your sense of feeling free. You had mentioned that a little bit earlier. Working on your music makes you feel really good. Take me on a journey through that emotion.
As in recording process or more live performance? What would you?
Whichever one gives you more pleasure.
I guess I'm pretty crazy about the whole recording process and composing and actually taking something that's nothing and turning it into something. That's what I find fascinating about music, is that you can have an idea and, you can write down a couple of lyrics, and then 2 weeks later you have a song that really has got a soul, and that's something you've created from nothing. I think I'm really crazy about that aspect of it.
And what does that allow you to feel?
Liberated, I guess, or something that's hidden that's being revealed, or almost like a kind of, well, without being pretentious, like some kind of prophecy. You tap in with some force, and then you're able to materialize it into something. From nothing. That's pretty much what's turning me on the most about music. And the live aspect as well is really interesting. I mean, with Western Dream, my other project, I've done a tour in Hungary and Romania in 1996, and we did about 27 shows, and it was really like a culture clash, and it was like really an interesting experience. So when you're on stage and you're actually, spitting out your art, and you've got people that have never heard of you, and there's a kind of magic that's going on. I think that's, even it's hard to find words to describe it, but it's really a pleasant feeling,
I can only imagine.
Yes, it is.
It just sounds like you're on a whole new level, an altered state.
Exactly. I like that term.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. We'll be back right after this.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kerman. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes the perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the Calibrated Storytelling Seminar. Have you ever felt tongue-tied when talking to a woman and did not know what to say next? This seminar provides the structure to create personalized stories that connect to a woman's emotional needs. Calibration is about putting people into the categories and then modifying your behavior. Do you want to learn how to be truthful about who you are, but in an interesting and seductive way? If you want women to like you for the real you, then this seminar is for you. The Calibrated Storytelling Seminars and telephone consultations, only available at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. We're in studio today with DJ Faith, who is talking to us about his lifestyle in music and being connected with alternative communities that he's performing for and the different events he does. Welcome back to studio, DJ Faith.
Thank you, Frank.
Let's talk about one of your current projects. Is there anything currently on the slate that you want to share?
Well, yes, I'm actually working on this big project called Rise of the Fallen, which is it's something I started about 2 years ago. And it's very different from Western Dream in the sense that it's more organic, it's less techno-oriented. And it's a kind of an orchestral, death metal, conceptual project.
Okay, and what can you tell me about this project? Who have you worked with? What can we expect out of it?
I'm actually working on the album called The Nest of 10, which is based on the concept of, you know Cain in the Bible, the son of Adam?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, actually, we learned that Cain was not really the son of Adam, and he was more like a hybrid son of an angel and Eve. And that if you permutate the letters of his name, Cain, you get something that means the nest of 10, which is a concept that teaches us that the 10 unholy emanation, everything the roots of evil and demonic beings all come from Cain. So I'm working on an album based on that concept, where we're talking about the fallen angels, and we're talking about the links with evil in our modern days with the person of Cain.
All right, I have to ask you this. Where did you get the information regarding Cain's true origins?
In the apocryphal writings and the Kabbalistic manuscripts and all the studies that I did, that completes the text of the Old Testament. So it's one of the books is a very powerful book. It was written in Spain in the 1500s, and it's called the Zohar. And this book really goes in depth in all the hidden messages and the hidden significance of the biblical story.
Wow. I can see where your degree in theology is coming in here.
It's a pretty interesting concept. So the album is based on that. So it's a double CD, and the first CD is called The Nest with all the original songs, and the second CD is kind of a remix and a special guest. So it's different versions of the same songs plus extra songs which have guests. So I've been working with someone that's very known who's called Edward Caspel. He's a British singer from a band called the legendary Pink Dots. And we're doing a duo on a remake of one of his songs called Hellsville. And there's a band called Adam from Italy, or we're doing a remix on the song called Ensov. And there's another band called Decoded Feedback, which are more electro, that did a remix of a song called Crusade. And we're still waiting for some confirmation from other known people that are going to participate to the album. I've got great reviews from Thurston Moore, which is the frontman from Sonic Youth as well. So this project is taking a bit more of it's more like a gathering of different artists into one thing. It's pretty interesting. So I'm working very actively on that right now.
How long have you been working on this project?
For the past 2 years, we did the single that's called Citizen Cain, as in Citizen Cain, C-A-I-N. And we did a DVD with 3 different versions of that song, like reconstructed. So that was released like last year. And the album should be released within the next few months. Just working very actively on it.
And what else are you trying to do with this project?
Well, we're trying to actually, make it known across the continents, and eventually go and do a conceptual tour. Like less as a circus like WESTERNDREAM, but more like like mixing classical instruments with electrical instruments, and have this very conceptual dark show with very theatrical, and trying to actually go and do shows elsewhere as well, but mainly pushing the album to start with,
Where would you eventually want to tour with this album?
It'd be great to commune with the old countries, so I wouldn't mind going and playing in Israel or Egypt or places that have a history that have to do with the concept of the album. So it's a bit of a dream for now, but that's something I'm looking at. It's to be able to, let's say, do something with the pyramids in the back, or go an actual archaeological spot in Israel that has to do with the biblical story, trying to be able to do that, or Greece, or Italy. So we'll see. This is all plans that are in the process of being right now.
What are you still missing to complete this project?
Well, we're actually finishing the recording of the tracks, which is almost done, and then we have to do the final mix and the mastering. So that's basically what I'm missing for the album to be finished. And then, we have to do some public relations and see if there's possibilities to be invited to events and shows and, stuff like that.
Speaking of events and shows, what events and shows are you currently doing right now?
Right now I'm working, you probably heard about Club Sin, the events. It's a BDSM community in Montreal. They're doing an event once a month at Café Cléopâtre on the St. Catherine and Saint Laurent. And it's a thematic every month. They have different, artists performing and all around the BDSM culture. So I'm doing a lot of. I'm the official DJ, resident DJ there, and I'm doing some brainstorming with the other promoters to try to come up with ideas and invite people and different concepts and stuff like that.
What are some more of your favorite concepts that you've seen while doing this particular project?
You're talking about the club scene?
Yeah.
One of my favorite concepts. I just like to see people that are really passionate about the different aspect of BDSM and actually going out there and working on the costume and actually putting their fantasies up front and actually just performing. I think that's mainly what's turning me on in that scene, and a lot of different aspects of the BDSM I've always been fascinated by as well. So I guess it's about it.
Who would you say are some of the mentors for your lifestyle, not only for what you're currently doing, but even going back, were there any professors or certain authors of books, maybe someone who you knew that was very influential on your development?
Yeah, actually I met a spiritual teacher. He was kind of a mentor for me. He used to live in Los Angeles. And this guy was very much into mystical spirituality and Gnosticism and Kabbalah and stuff like that. And this guy used to have the most incredible relationship with dolphins and animals, and he used to go for like hours and just meditate with them and come back with some stories. And this guy could have been taken as a Tim Burton character from a movie, but he was the real thing. So I had a lot of interesting studies with this person, and he kind of always guided me and said, don't let exterior influences change what you have inside. So I always kind of remember that from this great teacher. So that's somebody that I've always kept close to me in this world. And yeah.
If someone listening right now was interested in following in your footsteps or just getting a taste of the perspectives you have now on the universe, where would be a good place to start for that person?
I guess it would be listening to your inner voice and not letting, I think that's what's really important is self-confidence, and that, we all have it to start with, but we get so, it gets so disturbed by the, the outside influences that sometimes it's easy to say after a couple of tries, okay, let's say, forget about it, I'm gonna quit, So I would say that the best thing is to follow your inner voice and just let your art out, and don't fall in the trap of equipment and technology, and just try to create something out of nothing, just to come back to that concept, like our universe was created out of nothing. So same thing.
To live your day-to-day lifestyle with all the different things you do, what would you say are some of the sacrifices and maybe the biggest sacrifice you've had to make?
I guess it would be not falling in the 9-to-5 pattern, because it's sometimes extremes can be very have a great impact on art. So I find that when you fall in a pattern where every day is the same, then the art suffers from it. So on one hand, it's harder to have a constant life when you're not part of the machine. But on the other hand, you're able to, blossom more artistically. That's what I find as a sacrifice that I had to do.
And what are you sacrificing? Just not being part of the machine?
Yeah, not being part of the machine, and sometimes being, less into the materialistic twirl, and spiral, in the sense that, great artists often suffer because, they have to give up on some of the aspects of, let's say, money making and stuff like that, or having their own schedules, or being nocturnal or stuff like that. Doesn't always combine with the rest of of society. But at the end, it's a question of choice, I guess.
What are some of the obstacles you've had to overcome?
Honestly, I think that jealousy is one of the things that's envy and jealousy. I think is a plague of mankind, because in different levels, it's always gonna, when somebody's got the guts to show something and do something, you will always have people that are really impressed, and then you will have people that are really negative, and you have to be able to judge if it's really negativity or if it's envy and jealousy. And if you're not super strong about your beliefs in yourself, then sometimes it can hurt you. So I find that as much as being a DJ, as a performer, as anything that has to do with the public, you got to make a shell to protect yourself from that, because it could be very dangerous, and it could be very powerful in an evil way.
What was or is the absolute greatest pleasures that you have gotten or you're still getting from living this lifestyle of yours?
I think the pleasure is still a recurring feeling of being able to create, and to be able to work on, different concepts, and be able to, create artistic entities, and to be able to create, as far as being music or, shows or visuals or anything like that, to be able to actually keep on creating. The day you're going to try too much or want to create and it's not going to come out, well, it's going to be sad, but it's going to be the end, So I think that's my biggest pleasure. And to have recognition as well, and to see other people that are really associating their own passion with mine, for instance, or let's say somebody that comes from, like it had happened recently, from LA, who did a BDSM show, and she chose some of my music, and then she came to see me and said that she got turned on so much by the symbiosis of my music and her performance, and just a little comment like that sometimes could, uplift you.
Would you say that in your lifestyle it's easier to meet people for long-term connections, or do you find that challenging?
I would say it's a bit of both. I find it challenging, and on some levels it is easier, but it's an ambiguous question, I must say.
Well, the idea is, let's say you want to get involved with somebody for a long-term relationship.
Okay.
But you're not part of the 9-to-5 machine.
Yeah.
Your art takes up a lot of your time.
Exactly, yeah.
You don't lead a lifestyle like most people.
No.
How difficult is it for you to find a partner?
Well, it's difficult, but on the other hand, what I found is that opposites attract themselves, so I think it's feasible too. You can meet somebody that's doing it and that's, looking for an external stimulus, and will say, oh, that person is great because he's in a different lifestyle, and together we can give each other a break, metaphorically speaking. So, yeah, it could be feasible. And on the other hand, when somebody's in the same vibe as you, sometimes it doesn't work either, because like you meet someone that's a musician as well, or that's into the same communities, and it's too much the same. Then sometimes it doesn't work as well. There has to be opposites that attract each other, I think.
Last question.
Yes.
If you could go back in time, visit a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give?
What advice would I give? Don't let external don't let comments and negative vibes from the external sources get to you. I guess that would be the best advice I could give myself, because there had been some times in the past where I had negative input, and I just took it too personally, and it just kind of stopped me for a bit, or it just kind of slowed down my art. And I think that it's not a great thing to do and lose time. And keep humility is great as well. I think when you're young, sometimes you tend to forget humility, and I think humility is important.
DJ Faith, it's been absolutely wonderful having you here on our show.
Likewise, Frank.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
Need help with love, sex, dating, and relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com. Coaching available in person, by phone, and by Skype. For singles, couples, and alternative lifestyles, franktalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating and relationships? Visit franktalks.com.
What do you do when you feel like a fool? When your heart has been broken again? Pick up the phone or get onto Skype and talk on a private session. Yeah, get a little help from Frank Talks. Whoa, whoa, get by with a little help from Frank Talks. You gotta try a little help from Frank Talks. What do you do when your love goes away? Try coaching one-on-one. How do I sign up to turn things around? Just sign up at franktalks.com. Yeah, get by with help from Frank Talks. I get by with little help from Frank Talks. Time to try a little help from Frank Talks. Does it cost a lot of money? It's the best rate going around. Could it cost a lot of money? Oh, it's worth every cent that you will put down. Yeah. FrankTalks.com. Oh, you got to go to get your help from FrankTalks.com. Yeah, yeah. FrankTalks.com. Would you believe that Frank gets results? Yes, we're certain. Just read the reviews. Frank knows his stuff, and Frank's got the goods. Good love can soon come to you.